good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is to you. This is Around the Pit, a brand new episode. My name's Toffees. You can find me at Toffees TV or... Well, that's pretty much the best place to do it. So I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor before we get started with the show today. A big ups to Pro-Built Systems for building the computer that the show is produced on. To Razer and Asus Republic of Gamers for helping to give us the parts and make sure that the show is successful. That said, let's talk about who's going to be here because I'm sure that's why you guys are all watching anyway. My guest, starting on the top left and rolling across, is a returning guest from last week doing the rare back-to-back performance, but he's had quite a week as well, is the man who was casting qualifiers and everything else just recently, but is still stuck not going to the big show. It's Ryuu Dota. How are you doing, sir?
Damn, just had to get that one shot in there at the end. Damn, there's no mercy on this show. I'm going to have to start firing shots at the host nowadays.
That's fine. At least you've been to the big show.
Yeah, I remember when we were casting, like, I don't know, was it 5 months ago, 6 months ago, something long before then, and then all of a sudden you just fell off completely. And I was like, "Where's my Toffees at? Where's my other caster at?" And
that is true. That is true. I did fall off. I fell off so hard that I never bounced back. Reddit eviscerated me and tore my soul out, and it took months for me to get it back.
Well, they spanked me too, man. They bent me over, and that's what they do to everyone.
That is, and it's what makes us the people that we are. Now, speaking of people being who they are, the man in the middle is someone that you may not recognize. He's usually behind the scenes, compiles stats for various teams that he's generally not allowed to talk about, but is the stat master himself as well as the co-caster. This is Motpax. Don't judge me because of my haircut. Mackenzie, how are you doing today?
What? Never really figure out a team's draft per se. Like, you definitely, you recognize certain things that pop up, and then it's like a flow chart, right? In the end, that's what Dota comes down to. A friend tried it, doesn't work very well, just so you guys know. So stick with your Clippers for now.
I dig it. I dig it. How you doing today? I know you've been watching a lot of Manila.
Yeah, I'm catching up. I missed a couple of C and D, but I gotta get ready for Wings. So I'm watching a lot of Wings games. Interesting stuff there. Generally checking out most of the replays today. Some fun stuff.
Now, I heard that a team had tasked you with figuring out Wings' drafting system. How long did that... Have you figured it out, or are you still working on it?
I mean, I don't think you ever really figure out a team's draft per se. Like, you definitely, you recognize certain things that pop up, and then it's like a flow chart, right? In the end, that's what Dota comes down to. It's a flow chart that comes with, like, certain value here, lack of value here. So you want to see, like, all right, if they pick this, they're going to be looking towards this. So if we're going to ban that out, we know they're going to be moving in towards this. And then you want to move on to the next step, you're saying. So then they like to pair up this with that. And it's always that give and take of, we're going to give them this. Like, just because they're going to pick something doesn't necessarily mean you want to ban it. You just need to make sure that you're at least prepared for it.
Can I say something real quick? Everything from PGL has been amazing. Besides their stats graphs at the end of the game, that shit is. So
I don't understand it. But before we talk about it, let's at least unmute Gareth because he's been sitting there quietly waiting for his chance to get involved. Guys, our third guest, all the way to the right, last but certainly not least, is another man who is just casting Manila Majors, is based out of Join Dota, casts all the time, and has been to the big show occasionally, and is now here on the bigger show, Around the Pit. How are you doing today, Gareth?
I'm pretty good, yeah, not too bad. I'm just laughing at your shots at Ryuu and Motpax. I'm a little bit disappointed that you're not flaming me though. Like, where's the shots at me? I wanted to have a rebuttal.
The man who stole my casting job at Dota Pit, Gareth.
Nice hype casting.
You had a chance at Dota Pit? I thought that was just Gorgon, actually. Sorry about that.
Douche.
I didn't realize, man.
Oh, that's awesome. No, we never had a chance. We knew we were fucked from the get-go.
Hey, are you Durka or Gareth? No, I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
That's a daily thing for me as well. I've got no idea who I am.
You should,
Split personality disorder.
You should see him when he gets pulled over and they ask him for his ID. He never knows which one to hand them. All right, so that said, guys, let me go over the rules real quick, and then we'll get into chatting. And I do want to make sure that we bring up during the production topic, let's talk about that graph so that you guys can explain to me what the hell it is, as I've been trying to sort of wrap my head around it. That said, the rules are simple, guys. There are no rules except obey the buzzer. Every topic is 8 to 11 minutes. That's just to keep us rolling along the topics. We'll try to get through at least 4 or 5 today. When you hear the buzzer, which is this, it means that the topic at hand is over. We're going to quit it and move on. So that's pretty much it. Every player gets a 1-minute soapbox they can choose to use at their leisure, and they are allowed to accrue points during the soapbox round. We also have a lightning round at the end that's 1 minute apiece. The person with the most points at the end of the game wins the Aegis and the chance to come back to any show they damn well please in the future. Seems simple, is simple. Not always played out that well, as we saw last week when Ryuu tried to score points. That said, let's get started with this week's episode. The first topic up, as voted by 72% of Twitter and over 50% of our straw poll, underperformance and overhyped. Now, I think you guys probably know what I'm talking about with this topic. We're going to bring up the two big hitters, Secret and EG. Did they underperform, or were they overhyped, or both? And then I also want to throw complexity into the mix because they got squished this week, and I don't think we expected it to be quite that bad. So let's say Secret and EG to start it off. Underperformance, overhype, what the fuck happened?
Can I just stop you? Can you say Aegis one more time? Because that got my jollies going. Please.
Aegis.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh.
Yeah, he's not an Aegis person.
Well, I was, and then I cast with Gorgon, and he bitches all the time about when I say Aegis.
Yeah.
So anyway,
all right. Well, first off, let's just settle that right now because
Aegis is fine.
according to LD, Ice Frog said he wants it to be Aegis, and that's why he stopped pronouncing it correctly. Because Gorgon's right. The theoretical correct pronunciation is Aegis.
No, both of them are correct. Aegis is American English pronunciation. That is correct.
I mean, yeah, but that's not real English. We all know that. Come on.
American English is a language, though.
If the Canadians won't use it and we live right next door, something's wrong with it. All right?
America did. That's right. Now shut up.
Wow. But no, we can all agree that Aegis is not the pronunciation. There is no hard G.
Well, it's not an egg. Anyway, let's actually talk about the topic. Underperformance, overhype, what happened with these teams? These are two teams that were like the new El Clasico, the kings of Dota, and now they're both in the losers bracket.
I think we all just like want somebody else to take over because we're all going to say the same thing here in the situation. We saw Secret coming in this group and they had a shot since we were saying, but when I came on the show last week, I was saying this group to me, Group B was going to be the hardest, and I didn't see Secret necessarily getting out.
Sure.
So it was interesting to see how that was going to go. The more upset is probably EG, considering how weak their group was. Mineski, I mean, that was supposed to be, the bottom feeder there. And then MVP, we haven't seen them do that well recently. And so EG had a chance there, but then they got 2-0 stomped by them. So that was very concerning. Yeah. And then now EG going versus VGR, they're likely going to be eliminated before Secret. Empire is a very strong team, but I think Secret in a best of one have more potential than EG to go on next. I'm very worried for EG and their roster. And to just real quickly at complexity, I was on this week with you on the show last week with you, and I said they were going to just bomb out and they were going to get completely rolled in that group just because of Nuvi and OG were just stronger in this group.
Absolutely.
With EG and Secret, I look at it completely the opposite way. Like, if you look at the groups there, Na'Vi and DC have performed very well up until this. They've been, DC have been stopping complexity, Na'Vi have been performing consistently well recently, and Secret is meant to be the better team between them and EG. They are meant to have the better players, they're meant to have the better drafter, they're meant to have the better infrastructure of the team as well. And they have been absolutely shit. They have not performed, they've not drafted well. That's the thing though, they are a joke. You're laughing at them because they are a joke of a team. They are a joke of a team right now and they're just not performing, whereas EG, they've shown signs of life. You look at their groups and people have stepped up to the plate. MVP always do well at LANs, they always do well at group stages against European and American teams. Against Mineski, okay, that's a little bit of shaky.
Right.
Mineski aren't a good team, but they put up a show against EG, and EG were meant to be the worst roster when you judge between them and Secret. But I think EG have performed well.
Secret's bracket was way harder, considering how strong Na'Vi are. We all thought DC coming in this was really hot, and Wings, I mean, that team just formed a little bit underperformed in that group just because of how well Na'Vi and DC. And I just think that Group D is just way weaker. So you can't say that necessarily Team Secret was the weakest.
I mean, the sad thing is, I think myself and other people I talked to didn't even have EG coming out of that group. Like, I flat out had, there's just no way. I couldn't see them getting past LGD and MVP. And I think it comes down to a lot of the same stuff with Secret, is that they haven't quite found, like, this style where, like, when I watch their drafts, I'm not even predicting certain things. Like, we talk about how it's a team that you look at players, right? You're thinking about, Universe best offlaner, Eternal Envy, one of the best carries over the past several months. He looked very solid. But I'm looking at them when I look at their heroes. When I'm thinking about what I'm banning or picking as a secret like analyzer and I'm trying to watch them, that's what I think of. I'm not thinking about team strategies overall. And I think one thing that EG, although it went pretty much as bad as you expected, you did see them trying to get into these styles. Like we saw that the Winter Wyvern, the Abaddon thing, that is a sustained style draft. That's not necessarily based on overall classic picks.
They just counterpicked that game.
Trying to, that's true. I mean, they had like the AA ban in the second phase that was like, okay, we're going sustained push strategy. But I'm just saying, like, at least I'm seeing some sign of like a strategy coming out, which is I think one of those things that starts off with a team when they're trying to build into something where you're worried about certain things. Like you look at Alliance and we all have this idea of how they're going to play the game, MVP, how they're going to play the game, and I want to see that stuff actually start to come out for both of those teams.
Yeah, EG's we all hail like Peter as the god of drafting, but sometimes he just gets over like a little bit over himself. We saw where he went like all in with an anti-mage and they had 4 magic damage heroes. That was just not the success or recipe for success during that game. And then other games you look at Secret and they're just having internal envy drafting for them now. They don't have like any idea what they're drafting nowadays. So that is their biggest concern. And as well as EG, they have to shore up their drafting. And then, like you said, Secret are just not a cohesive unit at all yet.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And I think that we saw right after the rounds ended, I think Peter even tweeted out something along the lines of, there's no excuse for our performance, and sort of apologized for it and said we'll get better. The inferences we heard from the panel regarding Secret, and I'm curious if you guys agree with this, was that they've given up, that they're at a point where they just don't even know what to do anymore. Do you get that feeling when you watch them that they've said, shit, this isn't working, I guess we'll go back to the drawing board after Major? Or do you feel like they're still trying to make it happen?
I mean, no team ever gives up. I think that's a little bit, I mean, I'm sure that's just them being a little hyperbolic, trying to be on a panel, doing that kind of stuff. But you see, like what was that one game they picked the Earthshaker into the Drow lineup, and I'm just thinking like that is so much weight that you're putting on a single player, and overall that kind of seems to be what it comes down to. It's this greed of like trying to get one player to like carry this whole game, where teams are just able to kind of figure out who that is and try and shut that down. And it's happened to Arteezy, it's happened to Universe. I don't know. I feel like it is just a style thing they have to figure out.
When you watch a lot of the games of teams that are performing well now, you see like the flow of the game, but not necessarily the flow of the overall game, but the flow of the movement, sort of actual micro movements of players, where you see, okay, this guy's moving here because he knows that his teammate is going to do X, Y, Z. You just don't see that with Secret. You see Eternal Envy running in. There was that key moment when he clicked, and he ran in 3 or 4 times to a similar spot. His teammates are like 2,000 range away, and it feels like there's no shot call. It feels like someone saying, I'm going in, follow me. It's just someone going in and expecting the team to actually have that, mental connection and know that he's going to go in. It just there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect in Secret, it feels.
That was a Kunkka pick problem in that game, in all honesty. I don't understand why
you can't blame a pick on someone running into a team fight and the team not following him. Though. That's not a pick.
Also sentries. Like, if
dynamic.
Passing that game, the sentry ward placements, they caught out Envy like 2 or 3 times around the map. And when you get those solo pickoffs on Envy, when he's going around trying to find pickoffs, that just slows down his early item progression. And you have to have that as a Clinks. You have to get a fast Deslo. You have to get that fast Roche, get more map control around there. And it just wasn't enough that game. The drought strategy just worked out.
Okay. Now, where do you guys, and this has been something that I think people have mentioned, or some of us have felt, the idea that Secret sort of looked to create a super team in the last trade cycle, to have 5 stars, all the best of their position, whereas we see the success of other teams, like Wings is a great example of a team, and even Newbie, that sort of said, we're going to find a synergy, we're going to find a style of play that works for us and work as a team instead of 5 talented individuals. Do you think that in basketball, it seems to work? If I put 5 great players together, they all sort of do their thing and win us a championship. But does that work in Dota, or do we really have to focus on team synergy over individual talent?
That's because in basketball and in football, you bring in star players, but they're all within this structure, the hierarchy, where there's the coach, there's the manager, there's the owner of the team, and if you're a player, you listen to the people above you. Whereas if you're a player in Dota 2, there is no actual power structure. Players have their own ideas of how the game is played. Maybe they have a captain, maybe they have a manager, but they're all in this kind of flat level, just like Valve is, basically.
Yeah.
It is very similar to how Valve set up, where everyone is invested at the same level. You don't necessarily have a higher being.
Right.
Whereas at other teams, like you look at Na'Vi, they've got people like Artstyle who've been around for a long time. Soneko's come in, he's new blood, but he's still listening and extracting all of this information, knowledge from Dendi and Artstyle. And you can see that it's working out for them. Whereas Secret, these players from established teams that have done well previously, they know how they like to play the game. They know how they feel the game should be played. And it's all kind of collapsing into this situation where it's not working out at all.
Yeah, it's hard to always do this kind of like armchair, because we're always analyzing teams. But this is what we have to do. I mean, we don't have the inside dynamics. We're never going to have that. That's the nature of it. So just get used to it. Anyway, when you compare it to some other traditional sports and even other video games too, where you see something like Counter-Strike is a pretty good example of a game where a single person can have a massive impact in a game.
Right.
Like you can kill all five, you get a wipe, right? You kill all five, sick pistol moves, awesome, you won the round. Dota's just not like that. I mean, people might take that argument and say, oh, well, look at OG, they have Miracle, 9k MMR, he's fucking amazing, this guy's the man. But you look at how they play Miracle. I mean, it's 4 people supporting Miracle, right? There's a reason OG are the only team that still consistently draft 2 defensive supports virtually every single game. I mean, they are just letting Miracle do his thing, and they're propelling him into that point where he can kind of be that, like, I carry you, I will take you with me. And that's where we saw these players previously, how they got a lot of, like, maybe their stardom, like Eternal Envy or Arteezy even. So if they can start to work those kind of things into their, their current formation, it could be a little bit better.
I think the biggest thing right now for me in the past 3 to 6 months with the new patch and everyone playing is the amount of time people are actually putting into participating in tournaments, and Secret haven't. And EG is one of the teams that they sometimes go and they sometimes decline because they don't want to travel as much. You have both of these teams, mostly Secret, not playing in all these big tournaments.
Right.
You just have Epicenter, and so they're not getting practice. They're just sitting back, playing pubs and whatever, practicing Invoker for Arteezy so we can actually play the hero. But it's not working out at the end of the day. You have to grind. That's why you see Navi's success. This is a good showing of how great Navi are right now. Like at the beginning of the past patch, they had Enchantress plus everything. They were dominating everyone at Star Ladder when I was casting that, and then all of a sudden they fell off for the next 3-4 weeks, but they kept playing and playing and playing, and now they're here. Now they're 4-0. Now they're looking very hot. So in these situations, them grinding a ton of games has helped them for the long run.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to what Motpax said. Like, yes, a lot of the time we do like armchair bullshit talking about stuff, but we do have information about these teams. Like we know that in Team Secret there's Puppy, and EE has become like his right hand man, but Misery and Weeha, when they were previous on the team, we've heard that they didn't cause so much friction in terms of actual strategy making and how the game's meant to be played. There might have been friction within the game with shot calling and stuff like that, but overall strategy, they were very sort of amiable and open to learning. Whereas it feels like I'll talk about EG as well. Bulba used to obviously be the coach for EG, so there's obviously that synergy as well there with Peter and the rest of the team. But it feels like with Universe and Arteezy joining, maybe there is a little more argumentation about how the game is meant to be played, even if they respect Poppy and EE. They still have this difference in opinion.
They're still some of the best players in the world and are going to have opinions. That's the time we have for that topic. And I think that maybe this comes into play as well, and I think that Ryuu brought up the point, right? The idea that to go back to your likeness to soccer or football and basketball, they take 3 to 4 months off a year and sort of have recovery time, but the structure of the game never changes. Seems like Dota is one of those games where if you take 3 months off, it's really tough to come back because of how fast the game sort of changes on its feet.
And no one else is playing during the off season.
Yeah.
Exactly. Nobody else is getting better, and you actually get worse. So definitely a harder thing when you talk about esports versus traditional sports, and just how much harder it is to be an e-athlete, I think, is sort of the moral of that story. But let's talk about formatting. Now, this is something that I'm curious to see what you guys think about. The formats for the actual major, the group stage, the idea of not a full round robin, a sort of winner's bracket, lower bracket, group stage, and the way that it moves into the best of one lower bracket. What do you guys think of this format?
I think it's either this format or 8 teams in one and 8 teams in the other. I think this one's fine. I personally like the 8 teams better just because it gives you more rounded fields, and then you have more teams to play during that group. But the 4s is also nice too. It made sure that me and Durka were able to cast, so I'm not complaining at all here. So that was really nice of them. But all jokes aside, I think this group stage, having it 3 games too, was very entertaining. I was enjoying it more than just having 2-game series where like, oh, 1-1 tie. Now what do we do? What do we do? And it's a nice series.
It's more like a prelude, it actually opens the story nicer, I feel, especially for analysts and casters to talk about how the tournament progresses. Whereas with one big group like we've had at previous events, or having 2 smaller groups with 8 teams in each, it just becomes a free-for-all. It becomes an absolute mess. Where it's like, right, that team's playing that. Viewers can't watch 6 streams at the same time. They can only watch 2 streams. They've got to try and watch 5 other games actually in the client itself. It becomes a lot messier. But you've also got to think about the teams of players themselves. Because when it comes to format, it is not just about the viewers, it's also about the actual teams. And we hear often teams complaining about, having to play 5 best of 3s in a day, not wanting to have, the same teams they're playing against, and not being able to watch the teams that they're playing against in the upcoming weeks. So it's a really difficult balance to strike for organizers between viewer experience and not having players bitch at you constantly.
So
don't like the format.
Well, let me ask you this, and you brought this up, the idea of like not having enough time to prepare or watch the opponent teams. It seemed like a difficulty that could have came out of this format is the way that the winners of a game went straight to the next one. I mean, it was pretty crazy that like there was not a lot of breaks between these games, right? I think there was like Fnatic won their first series and was in their next series within something like 20 minutes. Is that do you think players, is that harder on them than the normal format, or is this because it was fun to watch? I just wonder how that affects those players.
But instead of having to prepare for, like, let's say 6 or 7 teams in 1 or 2 days, you're preparing for 3 teams in 1 day.
That's true.
I can attest to that being a little bit nicer in a lot of ways. I mean, it is a ton of prep work when you're looking in those big groups and those massive round robins. But at the same time, and you're seeing Ewok's Kicks mention this too, which is what I was going to bring up, was the fact that, like, it's kind of brutal because we don't often talk about the group of death, right? And all that stuff when it comes to Dota. But when you get this sort of a format and you see that group that EG was in, I mean, we were all just kind of like, man, if they make it out of this group stage, that's kind of unfair in a lot of ways. Like, you look at some other teams in the groups they're in and you're like, really? I don't know. It's so difficult to balance that. Maybe it's getting better. I mean, for sure, compared to like how we all talk about all the teams getting closer and closer and overall skill gap. But in the end, it can still be very difficult to get very even groups when it's split so much.
Okay.
I still like the 8s a little bit more.
I like 8s too.
I think it's better just because it gives viewers more chances to experience the teams that are playing against each other more. I think, sure, you say it's bad for the players, but the viewer experience is going to be better when you have 8s in one and 8 in the other, just because, like you said, you get teams off more. Sure, they might have to wait longer in the day, but they can still prepare in that time going up to the next team. So I don't think that's a problem. Whereas in your 4s, you have to play, like you talked about, back to back. 8s is just a lot better for a viewing experience, because then you're just like, okay, well, we know who's going to come out top 4 in this. We know who's this. And it becomes a struggle for those middle positions. That's when it starts getting very interesting. Whereas we're like, wow, okay, so this guy's just going to go here. This is stock standard. But when you have this middle pack in the 8s, it makes it very interesting to see who will come out. And it could be tiebreakers. And that's another part of Dota that adds another element that's entertaining to watch, as a fan.
So real quick before we move past this topic, let me just ask you your opinion on this. And I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm just curious. Is it more important to preserve or improve the viewer experience or the pro player experience at these LAN events?
That's a tough one.
Player, I think.
Really?
I think in the end, if you can't give good competitive atmosphere to your players, your whole product's going to suffer. Like, in the end, I think that is what you should keep on top. Much like how we talked about how the balance of Dota is very much revolving around the professional scene as opposed to like the pub scene. I think you should keep the same idea and methodology towards your tournament formats, because if you're not giving the most competitive atmosphere for them, in the end, the game will just decline and suffer.
This is why I'm going to have to disagree with this statement, because at We Play, it was like 80% players, 90% players, and 10% production and talent. And with that, it screwed up delays for like 2-3 hours. It screwed up everything. And when you focus too much on the players, you forget that the audience actually matters tremendously too. So this is a tough water to sled. Like you have to, it's a tricky slope, and you have to think about it for the long run. I think it's like 60% players, maybe 55 even, and then, you know, other 45, 40 production, but it has to be very close. You still have to think about the production, else everything's just going to go to shit, and then your viewers are going to be like, okay, I'm never watching this tournament ever again because it's horrible.
That's true. Durko, which one do you think is the way to go?
I don't think it's as middle of the road as Ryu's saying. I don't think it's close to 60-40 or 50-50. I think you have to strike a balance, obviously, but like Trent said, if you don't have that competitive environment, people aren't going to watch. People will not watch. They don't care if you've got funky stats coming up. They don't care if you've got double courier cams or fucking rune cams or anything like that. They want to see competitive gaming. They want to see their favorite players, favorite teams and stuff like that. And they want to know that the teams are comfortable in and performing well in the environment as well. Because if you've got a bad environment, teams aren't going to perform to their best capabilities.
Well, you won't have a bad environment if the production is taken care of, though.
All right. I think that's where we're going to stop this topic. I think you guys made some good points. And you sort of brought up the idea of the double courier cams, all that production stuff. So let's talk production value. That's our next topic is too much or too perfect. PGL production value. Literally what happened on day one is the first game, they super spammed all these cool features in like the first 10 minutes, and it became a little bit overwhelming. I think it was like Twitter, double cam, rune cam, all these things at the same time. And then Reddit sort of exploded. Half of Reddit, or half of the fans, and I should say to Reddit, I saw it on Twitter and other places as well, half the fans were like, this is the coolest. The other half of the fans were like, the fuck? I just want to watch Dota. I don't need to see both runes taking up half the screen, and I don't care that the courier's dropping off brown boots. What do you guys think of what we've seen from the production at PGL so far?
I think the best part was the 3 screens for the first. I think you do that for like the first 30 seconds to the minute, and that is probably the best thing about everything, because then you get to see the denies, last hit, see if there's any action, and then afterwards, the runes for me aren't the biggest deal. It was cool and all, but I think that first, 1 minute of the game is a very big deal to see how the lanes shape up, who's where, and then you can even like announce all the players then, because you have action things or a lot of things. As Gareth he was announcing all the players when we were playing, and then luckily enough, there was no action, so he was able to do that. So that's a good time to have that with the production.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question to Ryuu. I don't usually do this, but I'm curious about the 3 camera. The 3 camera is a cool feature. I'll give you that. For the 4 of us here who watch a copious amount of Dota, live, eat, and breathe it, it's great, right? Because we understand everything that's happening. We can sort of process it all at the same time. Do you think that's too much and might turn off casual or new viewers? Like if I've got a friend who joined Dota recently and I say watch the major, and for the first 6 minutes he's seeing 3 screens at once, is that too much information? Does that make it too much to digest?
No, not at all, because he'll probably be in a League of Legends player, and then other games you still have a mini map. So you have a mini map always to work with in other games, top games. So you'll always have to have that attention to detail. Okay, I got to look at the bottom left of my map. I got to look at the bottom right of my map. So you're going to have split screens, and I think it's going to be perfectly fine for the viewing audience. Maybe if it's your grandma or something, that could be bad. She'd be like, what am I looking at? But other than that, it'll be fine.
Fair enough. What do you guys think about the production so far?
I think they did it. I think they overdid it a little bit with the team intros. Trying to take a page out of StarCraft's book. The whole "Who will be victorious?" The whole. I despise that kind of aggrandizement. Just why are you doing this? What's the point? We know who's playing. The panels introduced the teams. The casters have introduced the teams. And now you know what? You're introducing the teams again because we really want to know that it's Na'Vi against LGD or whoever's playing. I think that's over the top, and it wastes time and takes. It disjoints the bridge between panel and caster and game. Creates this breaking of the bridge where the story is being created and passed on from person to person.
Right.
And it kind of breaks your immersement into it. I don't know. That's my opinion. I don't really.
I agree. You watch the casters throw it to the
website. They do the whole panel beforehand, so it just seems like
so.
It does seem like, and it seems like this through a lot of the stuff. There were some really cool ideas that were just sort of not fully executed. Like they said yes,
dead silent because they had been told by production, obviously, dudes, shut up, we're doing this intro. Whereas Odie's like, oh yeah, this is gonna be Na'Vi. You're gonna, you have to make fun of it at that point because it's really not the best.
Well, so I think that here's the question on that part, and I think it makes sense to do that intro if VODs are your primary consumption outside of live stream, and you're starting it at the intro, right? But whenever you go to their VODs on their website, they do the whole panel beforehand. So it just seems like
hope so.
It does seem like, and it seems like this through a lot of the stuff. There were some really cool ideas that were just sort of not fully executed. Like they said, yes, an intro would be cool, but didn't sit down and say, how does that affect our VOD system? How does that affect the flow of the panel? Do you feel like that is sort of the staple of production? Is it's overwhelmingly interesting, but maybe not fine-tuned enough?
Well, you know how one thing that like when you come into any sort of a background role in anything really, but in my experience it was like stats. And one of the first things you tell people is, you know, you're not supposed to be the star of the show, you know this. And it's the same thing with production. And to me, that is almost like production trying to like steal their own spot in the show. Kind of like they're not working with the talent, they're not working with the panel. They're just saying like, "Ooh, look at us, we're in production." Like if you had something like that little camera that zooms around the map, and that's in the game while the cast is still talking, you can get that kind of CS:GO feel going on. With the actual heroes that are currently being played, moving around as they're like getting into these like positions for those early wards, maybe that will be sick. I think that's the element that you're looking for, and you can still do an introduction element with that. But the current way is just like totally immersion breaking.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but we've also got to look at the environment that PGL has been thrown into, right? With the majors.
Oh yeah, no, I know. They're doing a fantastic job. I agree.
Yeah, like with the majors and with TI and with the Shanghai major in particular being such a flop, and with our lovely community, which, you know, at the drop of a heartbeat, they'll be on your tail if you make one mistake. They obviously feel that they need to be groundbreaking and they need to be putting on this massive show, not just to prove to themselves and the community that they can put on a great show for the majors, but they have to prove to Valve that they're not going to flop like the Shanghai major, that they can do the next major, or maybe they get hired to do some production for TI, or their ideas get used. This is their big time. This is their big showing. It's not necessarily, you know, a fault of them that they're maybe stealing a little bit of a limelight, but it's maybe the fault of Valve or our community pushing the boundaries further and further, saying we want more, we need more,
That's true.
we need you to do more, and then now they're doing more. It feels like they're doing too much. It's kind of weird, right?
No, they haven't done too much. Actually, I want you to look at this, because they went to the Reddit and they actually asked the community how do they feel they did, and they wanted to put out a lot of feelers for this group stage so they can change anything that was really bad for the main event. And that's when you want to have it. You want to have it during the group stage when everything could be chaotic, when you could have delays or whatever. And in the situation, they just tested out a lot of things, and a lot of things worked, and everybody loved them. Sure, there's a little bit of hiccups there, here and there, as we talked about with the production, but it's going to be fixed for the main event, and that's what matters more than the group stage. So I'm happy with PGL, and normally in situations you're gonna like remember 9 times out of 10. You won't remember 9 times out of 10 the good stuff, right? You remember that one bad one, but because like Garrett said, Shanghai was 10 out of 10 bad. It's like you know, you can't screw up at all.
Can we just talk like raise your hand if you had to pause the actual stream to read the stats thing? Did anyone else try to
I
decipher?
didn't pause it. I looked at it.
I just gave up on it. Tell me about this.
The charts at the end.
Yeah. Like,
I saw it once and I was like, okay, that's a K. That must mean kills.
Right.
Assist, and then what the fuck is the rest
Well,
of
I assumed that at some point there was like an explanation by the panel of the key, and went back to look for it and couldn't find it, because like I sort of get the columns, but then there's this weird chart that goes off like an EKG, and I'm still not positive what that's telling me. Like I should have gotten a screenshot to put up here, because I'm at a loss for the chart. Somebody who understands it, explain it to me.
I mean, it was like kills and then deaths, and so it was just like a little mirrored thing, and there was.
And then how it spread between players, and then how it progresses through the game.
Time.
It just wasn't that like something you just look at and just get it. You know what I mean?
So like there's the lines between them, like each individual player has their own like break of the chart, and then over time it increases for the entire team, and then the break between players. So it shows distribution of farm and kills and everything like that between them. It's just like you can see what they've tried to do, and the formatting in theory is good, but visualizing it on stream for 30 seconds or 20 seconds for an average viewer just doesn't make sense.
I think if they did a
net worth graph.
Well, if they did a breakdown of it, it would be better, but it's not intuitive to just a random viewer in 30 seconds.
I feel like if they'd just done, you know, hard numbers, it would have been a lot easier to understand. If they just had a table with like XPM, GPM, kills, deaths, assists, it's more visually appealing for pretty much anyone than a chart that spreads and splits across.
whole reason they wanted this though is so you could just like tell when like, oh, well, this is when the team fight happened in the middle of the game. Oh, this is when like 10 people died or one person died, or oh, like this team got completely stomped because they don't get anything or no kills or something this game. But at the end of the day, it's just very confusing. Maybe they could do it and have something like you said, Gareth, on the side where you have numbers and then you just have this that graph.
I mean, it looked really cool, but if it just stayed for like 2 seconds and the panel said, you can see at the 13-minute mark where there was this one big fight, and then immediately at 17 they take another big fight and, you know, like actually expand on it. But when it just pops up for like 10 seconds, I'm just looking at like, what is this? What is this? And then it's going.
The panel knew what the hell that graph was. They were just. I didn't get to see enough, but
except Nahaz. Nahaz is there, you know, hand down pants.
Was he there? He was there on day 2, right? I thought he got fired because I didn't see him on the panel.
he only gets fired for the finals. So
yeah, so
Gotcha.
I mean, he's still got a little ways to go.
That's
That's a little longer than James.
He has a quota of words he's allowed to use, and once he reaches that quota, they just cut him off completely.
That's hot. That's why they're holding him in reserve for the main event.
if you interrupt more than 5 people, you get benched for
You
life.
get canned, yep.
which is why Ryu's hanging out on our show today instead of there.
Benched.
All right, so that's it for that topic. I do want to say the production value has been impressive, and whether or not it's been overkill, it has pushed the boundaries of what we're used to. I do want to give a shout out, I think, to Pimp Muckle, who did a lot of work with them putting it together. We won't get into the topic of that because he doesn't want us to, but it is worth mentioning that he helped design a lot of the stuff that was involved, and that is impressive. There's a lot of really cool programming that went into this, so kudos to him as well as PGL. And hopefully they fix the graphs by the 7th. And remember, guys, what we saw is not all of it, right? Because PGL tweeted 2 days ago, prepare to have your minds blown on the 7th, which I hope means that they're going to scale back the pop-ups, because if they're adding more pop-ups, I don't even know how I'd watch the game anymore. So excited to see what you do, PGL.
Hey, you're American. You have American football, right? It's all pop-ups in that game, isn't it?
Yeah, but
they're
that's
advertisements. They're much easier to digest.
Yeah, and there's like
sure.
downtime.
It's all Viagra, beer, and lady feminine
well,
products.
and football, we only play for like 15 to 20 seconds and then stand around for 3 minutes so we can watch the pop-ups.
That's very true. I apologize.
You know, understand about football. All right, that said, let's go to a few more things that I think are pretty interesting in terms of, let's talk about the teams that have played, where we're going with this. Real quickly, we're not going to go the full 8. I want to talk briefly about the team that sort of, to me, it was awesome fun to watch, played really well, then wrote an article on their website about why they're gods, and that is Na'Vi. So it's Born to Win. That's the meaning of Not As Vincere, if you guys didn't know. They went 4-0. They're feeling good about it. They wrote an article on their website that is about as cocky as you can get, I think. What did you think about Na'Vi? Do they look like they have what it takes to go the distance?
All right, I just want to like tear this thing to shreds in like 10 seconds. So first off, they take a single game and decide they're going to base the entirety of Team Secret off this one game. So that's step number 1. And then number 2, they're running
He's got no 10 seconds is over.
Yeah,
Ryuu
okay.
has counted.
All right, that's all that I really need anyway, but they're a draft strat. And so Team Secret tried this like greedy kind of a strategy. It's a worthwhile cause, you know, it makes sense in a lot of ways. Yeah, they picked a Kunkka, but you kind of get what they're going for. And then they decide to extrapolate like the last hit distribution to some sort of like greed inside the team. And,
right.
you know, oh, Na'Vi's so great and we share our farm. It doesn't matter if the lineup, you know, they have a fucking Darkseer. Yeah, you have a Slardar. No shit, he's not punching.
That was the worst.
The article's so dumb. Like, it's a Darkseer. Darkseer doesn't solo gank like a fucking Slardar.
I 100% agree with you, Motpax, but you've got to split this apart. Like, you look at this is a poetic and satirical piece. Obviously,
Right.
there's no way this could be an academic, truthful piece of work. They're talking about you'll build a sort of armor around yourself.
Right.
What are you on about? What are you smoking?
Oh yeah, and Saneko is drafting now, which is very different. Unlike Secret, maybe they should switch up their drafter. Oh wait, they fucking did. Envy's drafting, and it's not Puppy now. Like, the guy has no idea what he's talking about.
It was a Shakespearean equivalency to history, right? It was like there's history and there's Shakespeare and there's Dota and what Na'Vi wrote about themselves.
It was very flowery. It
Yes,
was
it was.
very, very flowery.
More player trying to say what was going on in the game. I can tell you that much.
Now, let's say this though. Outside of the article, Na'Vi was a ton of fun to watch. They played very, very well. I thought the Dendi, especially he played that Wind Ranger game where he was just out of his mind. What do you guys think? As you had a chance to sit down and watch Na'Vi, I hope, what are their prospects going forward in this tournament? Because a lot of people, they were on the bottom half of the rankings, a lot of power rankings. Do you think that's changed?
I mean, I don't think they should have been, what was it, 14th by the English talent for
Yeah.
Na'Vi? I mean,
it was
look at
silly.
the group they were in. Like, why didn't they give them more? I feel like groups took nothing into account during that, by the way. Wings second. Oh my God. Sorry, I know that's a different topic, but that had me like dying first off.
Should
Anyway.
we bring Sun Tzu on as well? And hear what he has been triggered so hard by that.
Oh,
Oh,
I mean,
my
what a
God.
joke. Either way, no, I think Na'Vi have what it takes. Like, I mean, the writer's not wrong so much about Na'Vi, right? They do look very good together. Like you said, Denny's really starting to show up lately. He's got a lot of heroes that fit well in this meta as well. So I think they have what it takes to keep going on further. We'll see how they make out up there.
Okay.
You know what's
Navi
scary?
versus OG, I think it's a really good series for Navi to take that one afterwards. Liquid or MVP, that might be
That's
worth.
gonna be harder.
Yeah.
That's gonna be very hard.
Okay, so they're doing better, but they're not necessarily back per se. That said, though, this does bode well for them in terms of the future and moving forward. And that's where I want to go with this. Let's take that and let's transition it into another topic, and that is the case for the future. I want you to tell me which teams won't win, but are going to make a strong case for an invite to Seattle, because that's one of the big things that you get out of this major, right? If you perform
That's
well, you get a shot at the presumably $17 to $25 million, depending on where we end up. That's a pretty big piece of the pie, even if you finish in 12th or 7th place. So
Most important one would be LGD. That is like they have the most approved by far, and so far they are. So that they're the one who I have my eye on the most when it comes to something like what you're mentioning, and then probably DC next.
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, DC is a big one, right? I mean, DC was one that scrambled after when the shuffle happened, right? We saw Bulba leave, and they sort of scrambled around to get their players put together and get everybody to the house. And they went on a run 2 weeks ago and have been playing very well. And now they look outrageously solid. If you guys haven't been following DC in this particular tournament, their group matches in a very difficult group were very good. They went 2-1 against Wings. They went 2-0 against Wings on the back end. Like, other than losing to Na'Vi, how are these guys going to look as the tournament goes forward? Are you looking at a top 10 position for them?
I tweeted this out about I think 30 minutes ago. I really want to see who comes out or where DC or Newbie go to the bottom, because I said Newbie was going to win this whole tournament. So I have to actually stick with them for, at least for me. But DC, I could see them easily beating Newbie, and either of these teams making the whole run through the gauntlet in lower brackets. So I want to see where they go into the bottom seed and who they're going to face against, because maybe what if DC goes and faces like a reinvigorated like Wing. Well, they can't face Wings again, all right? So you can't face that. So they're going to be probably in the bottom bracket. So they're probably going to face either VGR or, well,
Probably Empire, honestly.
yeah, I think it's VGR and maybe Empire. I'll just do my predictions for those two right then. EG just not giving me enough to hope on right now. But and then Secret and Empire, they've just both been flip-floppy. And yeah, Empire's just been a little bit more solid. But I think that's one of the matches that's going to be the closest in the lower bracket where we don't know who's going to come out.
For sure.
And so I can see them making the run. And that'll be very interesting to see.
Gentlemen, what else do you guys? Go ahead.
I think MVP are in a position where they're forced to prove themselves because they've been they've always been a team that's done very well against European teams, especially on LAN events.
Right.
And they have failed consistently in Southeast Asia. They lost 4 tournament qualifiers in a row to Fnatic, Epicenter, Frankfurt, Manila, and I can't remember what maybe it was just 3 then for them. And they lost like 3-0 in all of those.
Right.
Yep.
So
Fnatic
they've got so they have to come to this tournament and they have to prove that they can get top 8 at the very least, if not top 4, for any chance of Valve noticing them and saying, oh yeah, they can come to Seattle, they can do this, because they are a solid team. They have performed well. They've won LAN events, they've won tournaments, they've placed top 4 in multiple of them. But if you don't perform well in your region and then you don't perform well at the major, you have no chance whatsoever. So I agree with Trent that LGD and DC are like top 2 competitors. Alliance might sneak into there as well because they were performing well, but they've been a bit shaky over the past month and a half or so. The rest of the teams, it's kind of as we expect. Liquid doing very well, OG, Newbie performing, whereas Moneski, VGR, Wings to some extent, they're kind of the dark horses. I mean, maybe you can't call Moneski a dark horse, but the complete underdog. But
Yeah.
Yeah, but-
They're not gonna win.
They're like Cinderella story, but they're like the mouse in Cinderella. Like they have a lot of work to do, you know.
They're sewing the dresses and stuff like
They're
that.
sewing the dresses. They're showing that's making the dresses for the big show, hoping that it works
my
out. So you brought up Alliance and you brought up MVP Phoenix. Theoretically, if all goes as I think they've been performing, Liquid probably beats Phoenix in the first stage. Do you guys think that's likely? Liquid over Phoenix or Phoenix over Liquid?
I think it's pretty likely.
I think it'll be close, but likely. Yeah.
Okay,
I'd
so
say like 60-40.
60-40. So chance MVP goes to the lowers bracket. Can they beat Wings? Can they beat Complex? Or can they beat Wings and then they go up against Alliance? So it's really there is a chance that if they get through Wings, which is gonna be very difficult, they'll meet Alliance in the lower
You mean
bracket.
Complexity. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, I hope so. As a I'm a North American fan, right?
He's as deluded as Swindles is.
Listen, I when they formed their new team, I thought they would finish in the top 6-ish here at this tournament, and I'm praying that they do, so that I don't look like an idiot. But based on performance of the tournament so far, it'll probably be Phoenix versus Alliance for the chance to move into that top 8 that you just brought up, Gareth. Who do you think is able to make that advancement? If it's Alliance straight up against Phoenix, who has the advantage?
I think that's dead heat.
Okay.
I honestly think that's like 50-50 because like so much of games nowadays are down to draft, and both of these teams are very kind of tempo based on their players. The draft will define the games. Like there won't be games where it's just like, oh look, they're both doing really well. It'll be like one team is completely stumping the other.
I feel like Alliance have some issues that MVP will be very good against, though.
Yeah.
Like when you started thinking about Bulldog and how much they rely, like so much of Alliance, like when they win, they're basically back on Bulldog go farm, load up, play Slardar, and we're gonna try and win the game that way. Like we're gonna try and make the space for Bulldog, but MVP don't give space. I mean, they had like pioneered the new run at you kind of strategy a long time ago. That a lot of these other teams that kind of like MVP made their rise. This is where like Wings rise completely came from, just running at you,
Right.
faster than you do, outnumbering you in every single engagement. And that's the kind of stuff that, to me, with Alliance and the way that they rely on Bulldog to have this backseat at the beginning into that farm, that's something that MVP are just going to be like, yeah,
Right.
let's just come up and win this.
Yeah, Alliance, that's their biggest flaw right now, is because with them, they always give they Bulldog and all these heavy farm dependent heroes at times, and then situations where they're fighting 4v5. And when you're fighting 4v5 against MVP Phoenix, who come online even faster in game,
Yeah.
like they go 5-man at 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whenever, constantly, because that's how they pick low cooldown ultimates and everything. That's when it becomes very concerning for Alliance in this series, where they could get
Have you-
overrun early on.
Have you guys seen Alliance play recently? They've been picking like Centaur and stuff for Loda. This team has come online very early on at this tournament. This isn't the old Alliance. This is the new Alliance that's picking early breakout carries for Loda. Off-lane carries the Bulldog like Broodmother a couple of games, which don't require massive amounts of farm that can still fight early on. S4 with your Queen of Pains and Leshraks. This isn't the old Alliance. This is an Alliance that's fighting from like the 10-minute mark.
I think it's so tempo controller for S4, check. Space creator for Bulldog, check. Loda going around killing, trying to make space for his team, check. I think it's actually Alliance, but different heroes in the regards there.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily.
They're like grouping up and fighting at like 10 minutes though.
Yes,
This
they
is-
need to group up and fight.
But I still feel like it's 4 heroes grouping up. It's not 5.
not- yeah.
Like Bulldog's still doing that thing where he is a Broodmother, and yeah, maybe he like joins the
No,
fight. But we're talking MVP are like
he's not playing the split push Broodmother though. He's going Echo Saber and like crit and stuff like that. He is fighting with Brood.
I've seen his Echo Saber. Yeah, he
they've
goes.
also been like losing games. They've been winning their games where Bulldog is playing Prophet though. When they're in those strategies, those are the ones that at least when the replays I was going through this morning, those are the ones where they're doing well and they're doing their best. And so to me, I feel like they're going to be attempting that stuff against MVP, who don't do 4-man group up. They do 5-man group up for like 10 straight minutes.
So
They got wiped by Fnatic when they did Nature's Prophet the other day. Like I think they won one game with Nature's Prophet against Fnatic, and
Yeah.
that looked okay, but it wasn't spectacular by any means.
So it's a little bit of an old school, new school. It's fun to see Alliance adjusting. I think we can all agree that Alliance has evolved well over the last year. Because what we sort of saw in Dota this year was, if you equate it to old-fashioned sports, right? The idea of like how basketball and the Pistons were all about team play and moving around the outside and taking the right shot at the right time, to like Miami, which is all about charging down the court as fast as possible, getting the flashy plays, making big movements very quickly. And I think we're seeing sort of a migration in the game where these old guard teams who are used to playing defensively and sort of making things happen on their time pace are having a hard time dealing with those fast-paced new teams. But would you say that those old guard are adjusting pretty well in forms of like Alliance really sort of saying, all right, well, we're going to meet the new meta? Or do you think that they're going to get stuck in this old way?
I think they're adapting really well when they have Cinderin as a coach. I think that he's putting a lot of ideas in them. And I think my biggest
true.
problem with
Cinderin's
Alliance that's got me a non-believer is just that I wish S4 would actually practice when OD first came out, as well as Invoker. I wish he would practice those heroes more and give his team a better opportunity. Whereas Loda, he's been expanding his hero pool. Bulldog still plays kind of the same heroes, but he can still play Slardar at times. He can play those initiating heroes, not maybe to the best, but he still does it. And then I wish S4 would still, learn these, diverse heroes in the mid lane where you have to be a better playmaker as the Invoker. So I want to see if he can play Quaswex Invoker or something that put his team on the back. Put his team on the back with one of those heroes, and then I'll be a better believer in Alliance in these situations. But I have a quick question here. Are we going to see an OKC in any of these upper bracket games? Like any big upsets?
A what?
Okay, so that's a basketball reference. They went
British people, I tell you.
Doesn't work with me.
Awful.
Okay, so
Translate.
they were.
I'll take DC 2-1 over newbie.
Okay, so OKC, let me explain for Dirk. OKC, they were up 3-1 in a series. All they needed to do was win one more game, and they flopped 0-3 to the Golden State Warriors. So who is going to flop here in the upper bracket?
So who's the big flop is the question.
So who's meant to win but will lose?
Yes. OG.
You think
That's
OG?
not a bad choice.
You think OG is going to beat Navi? Is what you're saying?
I think that they will. I think they'll.
Because I don't know. Both of these teams are strong.
Well, I'm
So I
not the
don't know.
analyst. You guys talk about it. I'm just sitting here.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be liquid. I don't think that newbie DC has a big enough disparity between them to call it a flop. LGD maybe. I think OG is like the safe choice.
It's the most
Like,
likely.
it's between OG and LGD. I think Fnatic could be LGD.
Yeah.
Are we? I mean, I love DC. Don't get me wrong, but are we really ready to call that an even matchup? I know that they performed extremely well recently, but is it fair to newbie to
just,
say
like,
that that's
good
as
on
close
everyone,
as we're
but
playing?
that's Group A though. So that's one of those discrepancies between where we go back of 4 people in one group. We don't have enough sample size to really work with. Whereas if we had 8 teams in one group, we have a bigger sample size to work with.
Fair.
So I'm not sure. I can't call newbie and Digital Chaos because I really do think these teams are a little bit evenly matched considering how newbie did. That is scary, but I think DC can match up against them. I think the biggest flop potential is the Team Liquid versus MVP Phoenix. I don't think it's going to happen though. That's why I can't pick that. And then that's why you guys are saying OG Navi looks like the biggest chance there.
Absolutely. All right, I think that's all the time we have for that topic. Guys, we've been going for a while now. We like to wrap up the show with the lightning round. The way the lightning round works is everybody gets 1 minute to talk about a topic that I selected ahead of time and sent to them, so they should have a rough idea of what we are discussing. If you missed it, it was in your Skype.
Oh, yeah,
Motpax.
right.
That's
Okay.
not my fault. All right, so the lightning round today is simple. Who wins it all and why? So tell us who you think, because and this was a battle. You mentioned Sun Tzu earlier, where he was going bananas on Twitter, right, about predictions and placements and rankings. And Cap made a pretty good point where he said predictions before a group stage where no one's actually eliminated is not something that you have to take as like, these are God's, these are the rankings, these are the accuracy rating. Because right now, even the bottom teams could still technically come back and win the whole thing with this format. So let me ask you this. Now that we're in the stages, now that you've seen them play on LAN as a team, who do you think takes it all and what makes them take it? And I'm going to roll a randomizer here and see who gets to go first. And the first one up is going to be Motpax. So Motpax, who takes it and why?
Excellent. This means that everyone could just follow my lead because I believe that Team Liquid will be taking this one. I think they're set up very well in the matchups that are going through that upper bracket. You got MVP first, winner of Navi OG. I consider that to be still favorable for Liquid at that point. And then coming out of that lower, like 4 teams in the upper bracket, I would probably predict either newbie or DC. And I think Liquid, obviously they showed there's stuff against newbie once already. I feel like they understand them a lot. And it's not just the fact that they've I think Charlie had a kind of an interesting part that he brought up on the panel. Our newest analyst added into the world of Dota 2. But Mr. Charlie Yang, he brought up the fact that Liquid are trying to bring up this weapon. You know, you look at OG and you're kind of scared of like Miracle, and he's someone that you're fearful of. And when you look at Team Liquid, maybe you don't have that same fear. You're thinking like, who am I scared of? And they want Matamba Man to be that weapon. But to me, that's not important for Liquid. To me, it's like Jerax is the weapon and Kuroki are the weapons. They've just been putting in so much work lately. And the way that Matamba Man can play these heroes, it's not just Lycan. It could be Ursa that's still getting banded against them. The way that he creates space to allow those supports to try and flourish, to bring into that whole like mid-game domination, we're just going to take your racks whenever we feel like it. It's a good team. I'm picking them.
All right, so you're picking Liquid. Let's hit the button again here. All right, Ryuu, you're the next one up. You've got 1 minute on the clock. Who's going to win and why?
Well, for the sake of my prediction, for the sake of last week, to be truthful, I have to pick Newbie here. And with the dominating 4-0 start in their group stage, what a way to pick this team. It's easy sledding for them. Maybe not so easy in the first stage because my second favorite team would be DC in all of these. And then it would be Liquid. So I could see all these three teams be able to finish first, but I'm going to pick Newbie just because they've been looking so dominant. I don't think they're going to be able to stop Kaka's Phoenix at all. And they have to ban out against this guy constantly. As you talk about Liquid supports, I feel like Newbie supports are just doing a lot more work. Kaka has just been a madman, and I don't know how you stop Newbie right now. We're going to have to see if DC can do it, but if Newbie 2-0 stomp DC, I don't think nothing's stopping them from getting to that upper bracket final. And we're going to have to see how they fare against the other teams. Fnatic, LGD, that should be a very fun series, but I don't think they have what it takes to beat Newbie.
All right. That was actually perfectly lined up at the minute mark. Well done, sir. And last but not least, the man with his final chance to make a statement, it is Gareth. You have 1 minute on the clock. Who's going to win and why?
You are all going to think I'm insane, but Fnatic are going to win the Manila Major. They have looked incredibly strong coming into this, and I honestly believe they have had the most evolution and development of any team in the past 3 or 4 months. Previously, they've relied heavily on mid one towards the mid lane. Like Motpax was saying, you know, people aim at players, they aim at Miracle, stuff like that. Miracle, stuff like that. People aimed at mid one, they changed things up. They stopped giving him Invoker, gave him more team play heroes. They aimed at DJ, they aimed at Net, they aimed at Ohio, they aimed at 343. And now Fnatic have kind of evolved and put themselves in a position where they are dynamic at drafting. They're putting their 5-role and 4-role supports towards the mid lane, playing Axe and shit like that. They don't care about meta. They don't care about what other teams are doing. They'll put their players wherever they bloody well want to. They're having Mushi on playmaking carries. He's now found himself in a good spot, replacing Net. There were a lot of talks about, you know, a little bit of a toxic relationship within the team, but that's all been sorted out. They're all very friendly and happy in there. Mid one has been actually stepping up to the plate recently from the off lane when he's been swapped into that role. And I think that their depth of drafting and the way that their team matches up against others with the ability to stop aggressive hardline pushes is very good for them.
All right. No, I agree with that. I think that's a very interesting perspective, and seeing the way that they've played, very true. Plus, we saw that angry face. I don't know if you guys got followed that on Twitter, but they posted a quality picture of Mushi making angry face at breakfast. That face would scare anybody out of winning. Let's take a look at the score because we have a unique situation here where it is very close. Ryuu is sitting at 27, Motpax at 26, and Gareth is at 27 as well. So that puts us at a tie for the final. So, in the interest of time, we don't want to go too far over, but I suppose I could throw something in there to see a tiebreaker. What you guys think about this? Let me ask. This is for Ryuu and Gareth as a tiebreaker.
It's like Final Jeopardy when someone's in the negatives.
Real quick, we're just gonna put a minute on the clock. You can both talk as you desire. I want to know who or what was the biggest surprise from the group stages.
Biggest surprise from the group stages has to be DC just dominating. I mean, Na'Vi is probably up there too, but DC coming out of this group where everybody's saying, haha, America, you're doing nothing, and you're going against Wings, who's going to be obviously favorites in this group, and you're going against the likes of, in the situation where, you know, you have VGR and all these other teams in it, you're just like, well, who's supposed to win? Team Secret, right? Team Secret's supposed to come out on top on qualifiers for these lands, but it didn't happen. So DC coming out on almost on top, and then Na'Vi, I don't know how you can't just say this group B was the biggest spectacular performance coming out.
Gareth, who's your big surprise?
The biggest surprise is not a result or anything like that. It's a game where MVP played against Mineski. There was a Huskar pick for Mineski, but it was MVP coming back from being mega creeps down, buying 4 Helms of the Dominator, getting Helm of the Dominator creeps to defend their base and drag creeps back into their fountain, and then come back with like double Rapier on their Ember Spirit and actually win the game. That was like the biggest surprise for me, is watching an insanely ridiculous game like that actually turn on its head against a Huskar, against Mineski, who had like dominated for 40, 45 minutes, and MVP actually, you know, holding out and showing their strength and actual tact and ability to come back into a game like that.
So I didn't award points during the discussion. I decided simply to listen and decide who I'm going to give that last point to. I agree with you, Ryuu. I think that DC was a massive surprise. Really a lot of fun to see. Not somebody that I expect to do as well as they have. That said, I had a lot of analysts tell me, watch DC, they're going to blow your mind. No one told me MVP would be able to make a comeback using cheeky anti-super mega crazy tactics. And honestly, I love the fact that it was one of those games that everyone's going to go back and watch the highlights of, because it was just so different than what we normally see. So I am going to award that last point to Durka, or Gareth if you prefer, because he pulled out the minutia knowledge instead of the sweeping knowledge, and that gives you the big win, Gareth. Congratulations, you get the Aegis and the 1-minute monologue. Talk about anything that you want.
Oh, what? No.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, you don't have to
Okay, right. Fnatic are gonna win the Manila Major. I have a minute to talk about 343. My boy Adam Shah. He has got the longest freaking name in the world, and I've got to bring this up 1 second because he has got Adam 01 Shah 343 bin Akhtar Hussain. He is the best player in the world. He can play mid-axe from the 4 roll. He can do whatever he wants. He's gonna win the Manila Major with Mushi and the rest of them. I don't need a minute to say anything else.
Fair enough. So you really do stand by Fnatic
It's my
going all
pinned
the
tweet.
way.
It's my pinned tweet. I pinned this tweet. It is staying there. I am sticking with it.
I mean, they look good, and they have consistently gotten better in terms of performance, it feels like, since their initiation. And that's something that we can't say about teams that have been on the top, like Secret and EG and others recently. So maybe it'll happen. It would be kind of fun to see an SEA team go all the way. Something that they're sort of where North America was 2 years ago, right? Everybody sort of just laughed at us at tournaments.
Yeah.
SEA was in the same position recently, and now they're starting to really represent themselves, and that's exciting because more regions, more competitive regions equal better Dota, and we can all agree that Dota has been phenomenal over the last year and a half, as opposed to what we would see in sort of wipeouts before that. So a lot of fun, guys. Thanks for coming on the show. Congratulations to Gareth. Real quick, let's run down so you guys can tell us where to find you, maybe any upcoming projects or where we can look out for you or what you're excited about this week. Ryuu, why don't you talk to the people?
Just gonna be chilling, watching some majors. Pretty much it. You can follow me at Ryuu on Twitter and Facebook if you want to follow and support me. And that's gonna be it for me. It was a pleasure playing with everyone today, and I'll try to do my best to win the next time. At least I did a little bit better.
You crushed
this
it,
time.
dude. Crushed it. You did a great job. All right, Motpax, what about you?
You guys can just follow me on Twitter at Motpax, but I'm sure you all are already, right? So don't need to go and click that little button. It's fine.
Unfollowed.
Yeah, see, you're the man. You know what's up. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I stream on Twitch. Come hang out, twitch.tv/Motpax. But for the most part, I'm still just busy cracking those codes, putting up the stats, and sending some stuff over to Complexity. So hopefully they'll be doing pretty well over the next day. It's kind of weird that we had this like full 2-day break. It's
Yeah,
like giving me
you probably
too
went
much
out.
time to fiend.
Have you been out chopping down a lot of trees, making firewood, things like that?
Yeah,
I assume
was
based on
actually
your
yesterday.
shirt.
I had a great, I was down at the cottage for a full day, no internet, so that I wouldn't be able to do that usually. But that was great.
It's strange that I was right. Garrett, where can we find you? What do you got going on?
At GBCasts on Facebook and on Twitter. Gareth on Twitch. I just got my Twitch name changed at long last. I've got Gareth, the real name, on Twitch now. I'm not sure what I'm doing in the next couple of weeks. I think I've got a bit of free time actually. Just going to be chilling, watching Manila Major, not casting, but streaming some regular games and trying to get my MMR up because calibration is not good. Valve, calibration is not good.
Calibration is brutal. Well, guys, that's all the time we have for the show. My name's Toffs. You can find me at Toffees TV. A big shout out to Pro Build Systems, Razer, and Asus Republic of Gamers for making the show possible. And of course, if you want to support the show directly and help pay for things like the cool graphics you're about to see in the outro, you can go to patreon.com/Toffees and kick in $1, $2, $3, or $6,000. Really, it's your choice. I prefer the latter, but the former is just as good. Have a wonderful afternoon. Play more Dota, and as always, Toffees out.